Welcome to Canine Revolution Radio. Presented by Canine Revolution Dog Training, enhancing the dog and owner relationship through education, balance, and pack instinct.
Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Canine Revolution Radio. I've got Chad and Kevin here.
What's up?
Samantha's sleeping in the back over there.
Call her out.
So today we're going to talk about insecurity. So we've already done an episode on anxiety. So now we're going to talk about insecurity in dogs. All right. So we're going to talk about what it is, what causes it, what the signs of it are, how we can recognize it in our dog. Some of the problem behaviors that we come in contact with as a cause of insecurity, and then we're going to talk about how to treat insecurity. Right? So most of the problem behaviors that we see are rooted in either anxiety or insecurity. Like I said, we've already talked about anxiety. Focuses on insecurity here today. So when we're talking about insecurity, when relating to dogs, we're talking about a dog's lack of self-confidence or just general fear-based behaviors, okay? So most everybody understands, the concept of the fight and the flight response, right? Our dog hears a loud noise or they're confronted with something that they perceive as a threat and they run and cower underneath something, right? Typical flight response, right? So this is an obvious and easily recognizable sign of insecurity, right? So dogs can also choose to fight instead of flee. Okay, so most people don't understand and recognize that as well can be, and most of the time is, rooted in insecurity, right? So first we're going to talk about where does this come from? Where does insecurity come from? All right, so we get asked that all the time. Why does my dog have insecurity? Why are they fearful? And really, I mean, there's a huge list of why it could be. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We're talking about how do we move forward and treat it, right? But there's a number of reasons that can cause insecurity to be present in our dogs. So for one, it can be genetic, right? So all mammals, including ourselves, humans, right, come with a natural instinctive response to fear. This is a survival mechanism, right? We feel fear or recognize fear and we react to it, okay? This instinct can be exaggerated in some. So you might see this same thing in people, but you see this, some dogs have an exaggerated fear response, right? It can come from the parents, right? So let's take a puppy's mother, for example. Let's say she's has high levels of insecurity, right? So she's under high levels of stress all the time. So when she's pregnant, she's under those high levels of stress, right? That's going to clearly have an effect on everything that's going on with the puppies inside of her while she's stressed out. That's not very healthy for them. But also, typically, you go to a breeder for a puppy, they're going to be there for about 8 weeks. So during that 8 weeks, they're experiencing an insecure mother and some of those behaviors. So they're picking that up as well, right? So that gets carried on. So other things are like improper breeding. Okay, so improper breeding practices or no breeding practices, right? How many times, do we see accidental litters and people don't really know what they're doing? That can be a huge thing. So there's a lot of things that humans have to do during the puppy's critical development stages, right? To make them properly socialized to not only, other dogs, not only people, but environments, noises, different things that's going on. And if that is not done, you can have a puppy develop insecurity. Right? You guys got anything so far?
Well, just touching on like what you're talking about right now, the mother, being stressed during pregnancy, that's going to have an effect obviously on the puppies as they're developing inside the mother, and then whenever those puppies are born, like you already said, those puppies, the first person or thing that's really imprinting on them and teaching them is the mother. Mm-hmm. Same with most human babies, they're really attached to their mother, and so if their mother has certain characteristic traits or personality traits, that baby or that puppy is going to pick up on that and perform those traits usually as well. You know what I'm saying? So nothing wrong with that, it just is what it is, but If you're out there looking for a puppy and you're checking out breeders, that can be an indicator. What we're talking about today, you can go to a breeder, you can observe the parents, you specifically observe the mother. And as we go through this discussion today, Chris is going to be pointing out some things that you can look for to be able to identify insecurity. You know what I'm saying? But if you identify that, maybe you don't go with that breeder, because maybe you want a dog that has a more social mother that they're learning from early in life, stuff like that. So that's extremely important for a lot of people out there looking for puppies. It's not just about the puppy. You got to look at the parents as well. And if you ask a breeder to go look at the parents and they say no, or the parents aren't there, that's a red flag immediately. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So just something for people to think about,
Sure. Along with that, just set yourself up for success. We get so lost in, wanting to breed dogs for aesthetics, that we're not even recognizing what's going on. They're forced breeding, whatever the case may be. Genetically, the puppies are already at a disadvantage if you have the right combination of parents. So another thing to keep in mind as you check out these breeders.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so we'll talk about some other ways that a dog can develop insecurity, right? And this would be through like traumatic events, right? So if at let's say we have a dog at a very young age, or really this can go for at any point in their life, but they get attacked by another dog, right? And they sustain an injury, whatever. This can be at the dog park or in the neighborhood or whatever. This can cause the dog to develop an insecurity towards other dogs, naturally, right? They were involved in a traumatic experience, and the traumatic experience was caused by a dog. I want nothing to do with dogs, right? You can plug in anything in that scenario, right? It can be humans that abuse dogs. They can naturally be insecure towards humans. Can be traumatized by a sound or a natural disaster, whatever that can cause that kind of stuff.
You could have a litter of puppies, back to the puppy and the mother thing. We've dealt with a lot of dogs that they were found on the side of the road. So you could have a litter of puppies where the mother has the litter. Maybe then the mother gets hit by a car. The mother's out of the picture. Now it's just the puppies surviving on their own. Yeah. Maybe some of the puppies don't make it, but maybe a couple do. They get picked up by somebody on the side of the road, or a rescue picks them up. Then they end up with somebody, down the road. Somebody picks them up, has them as their pet. You know what I'm saying? And now the puppy's bringing all that with them. Again, it's nothing against the puppy, nothing bad, but it's something that we identify to be able to help our dog live the best life possible by helping to treat that and rehabilitate that mindset. But that's another thing that could happen. And it's kind of along both things. Like, you got the mother's out of the picture, the mother's stressed out during the pregnancy because they're roaming around anyway. And then number 3, the mother's out of the picture. Now you got cars going by, you got loud noises, and so the puppy's just having these bad experiences back to back to back to back. They get attacked by some dogs or something out there, back to back to back to back, and now they got this bad, high or extreme level of insecurity. Now they're at somebody's house, for their forever home. Thankfully, someone was able to provide that to them, what I'm saying? But they're combating this at the house, what I'm saying? So another scenario that could be happening,
Even just not having their mom around. Basically they teach them how to be a dog. Yeah. She gets out of the picture at an early age. Yeah. Rough time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. So lastly, insecurity can be learned and reinforced by us, right? So our last example of trauma, obviously that's a way that they will learn insecurity. But we can continually reinforce insecurity if we're not careful, right? And so we see this a lot. So how we react to our dogs displaying insecurity can be a huge factor, right? So if our dog reacts fearfully to thunder, for example, right? What does everybody do? It's gonna be okay. They're shaking, right? They're visibly afraid.
I hug them when it rains. It makes them feel better.
Yeah, so we pick them up. We say, it's okay. We're trying to comfort them. That's a human thing, right? This is what we would do with our children, or maybe, like a baby or something like that, to provide that social comfort. We have to remember, we got to put ourselves in the dog's mind, right? We are essentially communicating to our dogs, hey, this is the proper response to what you are feeling, and I want you to continue to do this, the next time you hear a thunderstorm, right? So this is reinforcing. We want this we're saying we want this behavior to continue in the future every time you're afraid, right? So this is not going to help them overcome, right?
And the people do a lot of crazy things that, they say, like, it's okay, or maybe they comfort them somewhere. They're like, a thunderstorm's coming, let me give you your anxiety pills.
Your CBD treats.
Or let me get the thunder jacket out, put the thunder jacket on. You know what I'm saying? So people do a whole
And you don't even
bunch of
realize in
things.
those scenarios you can be you're triggering it too.
You're triggering
like
it
they're
before
like,
it even happens.
the storm's coming. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you got
So,
all these cues set up. You get
yeah.
the thunder jacket, the pills, all that stuff. All those are cues that something crazy is about to happen.
Yeah, they've been conditioned at that point.
Exactly. So you got to reverse that. You got to.
And how many of you experience anxiety too when the thunderstorm's going on and it's like, oh my gosh, we're just in this together, right?
Yeah.
We want to be a calm, confident, relaxed pack leader to help them to overcome this, right?
Yeah.
So good stuff. All right, so before we can treat insecurity, first we have to be able to recognize what it looks like. All right, so remember, dogs communicate through body language, right? So we should always be mindful of our dog's body language so we can better understand the world through their minds, okay? So for the sake of this conversation, dominance and confidence are related to each other, and submission and insecurity are related to each other, all right? So there's some specific aspects of body language that we pay attention to that can communicate insecurity, right? Some are subtle, some are obvious. So keep in mind as well, as we go through these examples, these are generalities, right? So these aren't like, okay, just because you see a tail positioning and this means they're insecure or they're fearful or whatever. These are generalities, and context plays a huge factor. Depends on what environment we're in, what all is going on, what their previous learned behaviors and things like that. So we're gonna give you some body language stuff, but just keep in mind, these are all generalities, all right? So the first thing we'll look at is tail positioning, okay? So this one's relatively easy to kind of observe and notice. So in general, the higher the tail position is, the more confident the dog is. The lower the tail is, the more insecure the dog is, right? So you might see a dog that has their tail tucked in between their legs up against their stomach, right? That typically means they're experiencing high levels of insecurity at that moment. Maybe it's just lowered and pointing straight towards the ground, right? Still pretty feeling insecure, right? Obviously the tail typically, when it's straight up, they're feeling very confident, right? So in general, that's what your tail positioning is going to mean. So while we're on the tails, let's talk about a wagging tail. So I think we've probably talked about this on, in previous episodes, but just because our dog is wagging their tail does not mean that they are happy, right?
One more time.
Just because our dog is wagging their tail does not mean that they are happy, right? So typically, tail wagging is some form of arousal, okay? So like my dog's issues, he liked to go after dogs. And I say liked to, like that was his thing, you know what I'm saying? So he can have arousal in that state of mind when but really all this stuff is what we're talking about. It's insecurity, it's rooted in insecurity, but there's a dog, he knows that he's anticipating a dog fight, he is aroused, right? So I would see his tail wag right before he would attack. You know what I'm saying? So yes, it can mean friendliness, it can be playfulness, but it can be anxiety, insecurity, submission, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's touch on that just a little bit deeper in general, a little bit of deep dive on the wagging tail.
Yeah.
In general, again, we're talking about generalities. It's going to change with every context, every dog, every situation. But in general, if the dog's tail is up or curled, slightly curled at the top, and wagging in an upward position, that's arousal. Mm-hmm. That means I'm probably ready to go get something, get after it. You know what I'm saying? If my tail is horizontal to the ground, horizontal, parallel to the ground, wagging back and forth, and a slower wag, that's generally, a neutral or a friendly or a happy type of wag. In general, if it's a friendly or happy wag, there's also going to be some rear end wagging, not just the tail, but the whole, how they get the hips going.
Oh yeah.
They get all
Especially if we're talking about them boxers.
Oh yeah. So that's the sign of usually friendliness, happiness. Then a low wag, where the tail is lowered, pointing towards the ground like you talked about, and either the tip's just wagging or the tail's wagging lowered. That's the nervousness. Dog's nervous. Yep. Dog's a little bit insecure, not sure what's going to happen. So a little bit of submissive behavior there, you know what I'm saying? But that's a general thing to keep in mind with wagging tails, you know what I'm saying? So if a dog's got his tail up and wagging, and your dog's running over there, you probably want to recall your dog back to you because that might end up in a fight
That
or
dog's
something
ready
like
to get
that.
some.
Right, exactly. Even a insecure dog that's cornered and your dog's running over there. Let's say you go over to a friend's house, they have a dog that's in the corner or up against a wall or up against furniture, their tail's a low wag. You probably want to recall your dog away from that too.
Or kid, right?
Or kid, yep. You want to recall your kid away from that, you know what I'm
That's
saying?
a little harder.
That's hard to get, you know. But recall them away because that insecure dog, now they're feeling cornered, so they're in that fight or flight. If they can't fight, they're probably going to fight, you know what I'm saying?
Force a bad situation.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
So, anyway.
Good point for sure. All right, so moving on, next we're going to look at our ear positioning. So this is pretty similar to the tail positioning in that the ears generally being straight up is going to communicate confidence, whereas the ears lowered or pinned all the way back, that's going to be more related to your submission or insecurity, okay? Head positioning is another one that we look at. So a dog carrying their head upright, so like chest is bowed out almost, their back straight, head is up. That's more of a confident, and obviously like a head lowered down, kind of a coward position almost. Cowering, not like a coward, but I guess a coward.
The dog's a coward.
But it's cowered down. The head is cowered down. That's more of insecurity, right?
Head positions relate to humans too, honestly.
Yeah.
Studying this dog body language, you start to observe people around you.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? If you go up to interact with somebody and they got their head lowered, they might be nervous about the interaction, so you want to, posture yourself in a more friendly way. You know what I'm saying? If you're trying to be friendly. But, Kevin, he's got chest out, shoulders back, head up all the time. Ready to go.
I used to get called cocky. It's like because I'm walking with my head up,
Kevin's like, why aren't you looking at me?
Stare at the ground.
Poor guy's just staring at the ground, straight down, cowering in a corner. Oh my goodness.
Good to go.
All right, so back positioning. If a dog has their back, so we kind of talked about that already, but back is straight, right, with the chest bowed out, head up, that's confident. And then you'll see with insecurity, a back will be kind of bent or lowered. That's going to be more insecurity. And then hackles is another one that you might see, and that's very contextual, so you have to be careful with that one. But the hackles, the hair on the back of our dogs, that could be like surprise or something like that. But depending on the context, that's going to also be showing some signs of insecurity as well.
I mean, like you already talked about, these are generalities, so you got to be able to understand how to combo these different body languages together, because we've dealt with, you guys know, we've dealt with dogs that are they're insecure, but they're displaying the dominant body language, confident body language. Their hackles are up, they're barking, all that kind of stuff. But really deep down, once you peel those onion layers away in the dog's mind, you can tell, oh, this dog's really insecure. So that's what we got to address first before we can do blah, 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 that it needs training-wise, what I'm saying?
And that's why the context matters, right? Because you meet that dog for the first time. Well, when we do, most of the time, where are they? They're in their house, right? As soon as we get them on a leash, we take them into a neutral environment, then you really start to see these signs of insecurity. They're less, getting aggressive or anything like that. Did you just have somebody join us over here? All right, so now that we understand what insecure body language looks like, we're going to talk about some other signs that our dogs may have insecurity. These are things that we can take note of in day-to-day life. All right, so how your dog acts in the home and around you can say a lot about their personality. So these are things that we encourage you to kind of start to pay attention to, right? When things are nice and chill and relaxed, right? Take note of where does your dog lay down when they have free time or whatever, right? They're just hanging out. Where are they laying down? So sometimes you'll see, like with a confident dog, they really have no preference. They'll just lay out in the open, out in the middle of the floor, or they'll even go lay off by themselves and don't care whether you're there or not. All right? They might be in the same room as you, they might not, but they typically don't have a preference as to where they lay, and they'll just, like I said, be out in the open. So if your dog has some levels of insecurity, you might see that your dog prefers to lay up against something, up against a wall or the corner of a wall, or up against some furniture, or up against you while you're sitting on the couch, right? You might see them want to lay underneath a coffee table or a chair, right? When a thunderstorm comes, what is their behavior? Are they like, oh, whatever, or hey, that's a loud noise, and they just look up and then go back to sleeping or whatever? Or do they try to jump into the bathtub, right? That would obviously be the sign of insecurity, right?
Run to the closet.
Run into the closet.
Shaking.
Yeah.
Lily did all that.
Or how many of you have a separate closet, kind of a area set up for your dog for when those scenarios. I know I used to, right?
Oh, yeah. I know a lot of people that Maximus and Trevor, they used to have a little thing set up for them, not anymore.
Even like a covered kennel.
Yeah.
Yep. So, not anymore. They got to get those dogs out in the open, help them to overcome that stuff.
I mean, they'll be uncomfortable at first, but exposure is ultimately gonna a little desensitization there.
So some other things that you can pay attention to when you have people come over, maybe strangers or even family members. How does your dog interact, or do they interact with those people, right? Confident dog may, again, show no care and be like, oh, hey, what's up? People are here. They may just happily walk up and greet them, right? An insecure dog may start barking or lunging at them or running away into another room or going into their kennel or whatever, whatever their safe place is, right? And then they're going to be displaying some of this body language that we've already talked about, right? You may see with an insecure dog that they do approach a stranger, right? So that not all of them are going to be aggressive. This doesn't mean that they're aggressive, but they still may approach, but you're going to still see some of these signs like that low tail wag, heads lowered, ears are back, that kind of stuff.
And then the people that are walking in, oh, hey, sweet boy, hey, sweet girl, and it freaks them out, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Bad interaction for the dog. It's better for your friends that are coming over. If you can tell your dog's insecure, act like the dog's not even there.
Yep, exactly. Yep, all about the energy you're presenting as well, too. That's going to be a factor.
You get that so much in the consultations, You walk in, the dog runs up, rah, rah, and then just stops. Yeah. They're like, he's usually a lot more crazy. It's just the vibe you put off.
Exactly, absolutely.
Got to be controlled.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So insecure dog might be clingy to you, right? Might be following you around the house as you go from room to room. You might not see them relax until you relax, right? If you're like me, you never relax. You know what I'm saying?
You don't relax?
I never relax.
That's not what I've heard.
Not even during noodle time?
I relax a little bit.
You might want to explain what noodle time is.
It's when you for your back. You lay on the pool noodle.
Okay.
Good call.
Yeah, could be a little, suggestive.
All right. Back to insecurity, boys.
Kevin brought up the noodles.
We all have the same chiropractor, if anybody's wondering.
Yeah. Dr.
He's been
Anthony.
on the podcast.
Listen to the podcast. Good stuff.
Next time he comes, we do need to have him talk about the noodle.
Maybe we could do a podcast while we're all noodling.
Ooh, that'd be a good one.
You gonna make that happen?
I'd probably fall asleep.
Ben's getting ticked over here.
He's saying the state of the spirit.
He's saying to stay focused. Sorry. All right. So those are just some examples. We talked about like the body language, and then some of the signs, like the things that your dog might do day in and day out. You don't even pay attention to. I know I didn't before I got into this stuff. I'm like, oh wow, he is. My dog is insecure. So. Dogs can have various level of insecurity depending on their personal experiences and personal situations. So in many dogs, insecurity can lead to some serious problems. So most of the time, most of the aggression cases that we work that come to us for rehabilitation are rooted in insecurity, right? This can be caused by dogs continually being put in uncomfortable positions, and they resort to aggression to escape the situation, which undoubtedly becomes a successful strategy for them, right? This could be, we see this all the time at like dog parks, right? They're in you're just throwing them in the pit, right? And there's all these dogs in here swarming them. They're in an uncomfortable situation. You are not going to, you're not there to stop that situation, so they have to take matters into their own hand. They become aggressive. The dogs back off. It works, and now we got a problem.
It's like the Spartan fighting pits, man.
Yeah.
Another good example would be like what you just talked about earlier with people coming over to your house. Mm-hmm. Maybe you get a new dog. Mm-hmm. People come over, your dog's displaying signs of insecurity. Maybe you don't pick up on it, or maybe you're like, he's fine. People always greeting your dog, bombarding your dog. Then eventually your dog gets tired of it. Yep. Now people coming over, your dog starts reacting, starts becoming aggressive or performing aggressive behavior because those situations make it uncomfortable, and it doesn't want to be uncomfortable anymore, and it knows that displaying aggression gets it out of that, So
it works, right? They bite, they go, whoa, and they leave the dog alone, and they're like, cool, that's all I wanted.
Right. Another escalation of force there.
Right. Yeah. And later on, if you're recognizing, as we're speaking, if you're starting to recognize, like, oh, my dog does this, like, well, he's just barking now. Mm-hmm. Well, that's going to grow. Yeah. It takes time, but it is going to grow.
It gets to the point of a bite, and what does everybody say? It just came out of nowhere. There was no sign of it. Well, probably there's been months, weeks, years of signs going on that led up to this, for sure. So that's a little bit on kind of like the aggression stuff. So some dogs are they have a very low likelihood of resorting to aggression. So these dogs can rely on their flight response, and some dogs are like all day, like, hey, I got to get out of the situation no matter what. If I got to bust out of a kennel, bust through a window, right? So we consider these dogs are flight risks. So obviously that presents its own kind of problem. This is why you see so many dogs end up in the shelters and go missing on 4th of July, New Year's. They get scared, they flee, and they take off under, even from their own home, which is their safe place. They're so terrified, they just, boom, they're out of there, right?
Fireworks going off, family's not home because the family's at the 4th of July party.
Left them in the backyard.
Busts out of the kennel or leaves them in the backyard, yeah. Dog busts out of the kennel, busts out the window, takes off down the street. Fireworks are still going off, so it just pushes it further and further and further and further until it's either exhausted and it can't go anymore, or where there's no fireworks and then it comes back to its mindset, because when it's in that flight response, it's in a crazy mindset.
It's tunnel vision.
And once it gets
Survival
out of that,
mode.
now it's like, holy cow, where am I?
Yep,
You know
exactly.
What I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. And then most incidents where we have kids getting bit, I think we kind of touched on that, but that's most of the time that's insecurity, and I hate to say it, but most of the time I'm not gonna say it's the kid's fault. It's probably the parents' fault for not watching,
Not helping the dog, and not having the structure, and not paying attention.
That's
you
right.
Know what I'm saying?
That's right. So,
Yep.
but again, not your fault because you don't see these things, right? So you don't necessarily understand what's going on. But if you're listening to this episode after this and something like this happens, then it is your fault, right?
It is your fault.
So
it's your fault.
It's your fault. But kids have all this crazy energy most of the time, right?
Going up,
Kids,
bopping the head,
yep.
pulling
Kids
the
don't
ears.
know. They don't know boundaries, even with people. I've had strangers' kids come up and like touch me in the eyeball, stick their finger in my nose and stuff. Yeah, that doesn't happen to you.
No.
Yeah, random people. So kids don't know boundaries, right?
Too
So
friendly. You're too friendly.
kids don't understand boundaries. They don't know what the rules are, especially super young kids. I know my almost 2-year-old, he's now at that phase where he wants to pull the dog's hair, right? That's my job to stop that. I'm not going to put my dog in a situation where she's got to correct that kind of stuff, right? So
He likes to pull your beard too.
he does. That's where it started. Yeah, he does get bit for that, but it's justified. So anyway, so those are just some of the problems. So you guys can see why insecurity is not healthy and can become a real problem for you and your dog, right? So many dogs get labeled as aggressive and are put down, unfortunately, when in fact they're not really aggressive. We wouldn't classify them as aggressive dogs. Sure, they're resorting to aggression, but they're scared, right? They're just scared and need some help, and people keep putting them down, right?
I mean, the majority of aggression of dogs that are displaying aggression or that are aggressive, like we already talked about, if you peel back the onion enough, what's really down in there is insecurity.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? There are a couple of those, highly dominant dogs. A couple of those dogs that are just straight up aggressive, and you deal with that a little bit differently, But majority case, you peel that onion layer away, which takes time. Takes a process, but you peel it away, boom, there it is, right in front of you. Insecurity.
Yep. Really, when you think about it, it makes sense. Like a confident dog has no reason to put on these displays because they're not feeling the things that these dogs are feeling.
They'll react if they're forced to react.
Right. Exactly. So insecurity, bottom line, insecurity needs to be dealt with so it doesn't get to this point, right? So we have a responsibility as dog owners to understand insecurity and take the proper means to address
Deal
it.
with it.
Deal with it.
Deal with it.
Get some.
Gotta get after it.
Bring it down.
Gotta peel the onion back.
This guy is
Get after it,
I keep thinking about
boys.
Shrek every time he says that.
What?
Shrek.
Oh, Shrek, good movie.
Shrek.
Yeah. There's an onion part in there.
Yeah.
I'm an ogre, not an onion.
Yeah. That donkey has some insecurity. He does have some insecurity. That's
There's a
my
lot
way.
of people that have insecurity.
That's my
Yeah,
way.
that's true too.
That was my way of trying to bring us
It
back.
kind of works the same with people though.
Yeah,
you got
it
that
does.
guy who's like, "What are you
Yeah.
gonna do?" A little insecure.
Yeah, for
Peel the
sure.
onion.
For sure.
Peel the onion.
Peel his onion back.
Get after it.
Oh my goodness. All right, so now that we know how to recognize it, we're never going to get through this episode. So we know we talked about how to recognize insecurity, so now we can talk about how to address it, right? So the first step in addressing insecurity is knowing and understanding what is causing the fear response, right? For dogs, it's the presence of other dogs, or maybe sometimes it's a thunderstorm. It can be strangers coming over to the house. It can be something simple like a vacuum cleaner, right?
The vacuum.
Yeah, the vacuum.
Surprised Wally with the vacuum yesterday.
It can even be, I mean, Kevin trained a dog that was afraid of inanimate objects. You know, like just a water bottle. It's too still, right? And woo, should be afraid, right?
Too.
Yeah.
And the reflections.
Yep.
Dude, that one
was
guy.
a big one.
Yeah. But that brings up a good point. Like, you look at certain things and you're like, that shouldn't be scary. Right. You're like, you just get over it, right? We have to look at it from their perspective, like from their perspective, what is traumatizing, what is fear. You know, maybe this water bottle just sitting here is fearful to that dog.
Menacingly.
Yeah.
But you don't know, like you talk about, you don't know what happened in that dog's past. Yeah. So all we can do, Ben's telling me to be quiet. All we can do is tell me to bring down the volume level. I was getting a little amped up right there. Anyway, you know, like we don't know what happened in the dog's past, but we have the dog with us at the here and now. We got to move forward, you know, so we don't focus on the past. We don't focus on the history. Let's get after it.
Absolutely.
Let's deal with it. Let's peel back the onion. Let's get it.
Set a water bottle by her kennel every night. Feed her next to it. Good to go.
Feed her out of the water bottle, right? So we're going to do something called desensitization, okay? So this is what we do in our training programs, right? So we have to introduce whatever it is that is causing the fear response and then provide our dogs with a positive experience. In short, that's what you got to do, all right? So the key here...
Sounds easy.
Sounds like a piece of cake.
Really easy.
Sounds like a piece of cake, right?
Sounds really easy.
So you got a thunderstorm, make it positive. That's it. All right, that's it. End of episode. See you guys later.
It's super easy. It's just like the easy button. That was easy. They should have an app. They probably have one. Easy button app.
I'm sure they do.
That was easy.
But it's not that easy, right? It's not necessarily that easy, right? So the key here is introducing the fearful thing at a level that's not overwhelming to our dog, right? So if the stimulus is other dogs, that's what causes all the insecure behaviors with our dog, right? So maybe we go to the dog park and we stay very, very far away. We're like 100 yards away, right? And so like barely to the point where our dogs even notice the other dogs, okay? And we do engagement. We've talked about engagement before, so we won't go into detail on that, but we're playing with our dog, having a good fun game interaction between our dog and us, while those dogs are way off in the distance, right? So the other common one we talked about was strangers coming over to the house, right? So in this scenario, oftentimes the trigger is the doorbell. The doorbell starts the whole process, right? So, yeah. Thanks for the sound effects. So as this begins the stressful situation of a stranger coming over, right? So maybe we want to ring the doorbell ourselves and try to perform engagement, right? So no actual person's coming over. We are ringing the doorbell. That's where you would do the ding dong.
Ding dong.
We need a board, I guess.
Yeah. That's where you would ring the doorbell yourself. Nobody's over here. Maybe they get a little bit worked up. You regain focus, play some engagement, right? We're desensitizing that doorbell.
Or if you have a significant other, every time they come home from work, tell them, hey, ring the ding dong.
Ring the ding dong. Yeah.
Ding the dong, ring the ding dong. Every time you come home from work. And as soon as you do that, I'm going to play with my dog.
We got bet on that one.
Ben lost it.
All right. Keep it going.
All right. So you can even take this a step further. Let's say the doorbell's too much. Let's say you ring the ding dong and it's too much.
Keep going.
It's too much. Like you can't get their focus. You can't play engagement with them. They're just losing it. So you might have to tone it down a little bit. Maybe we're going to play a YouTube recording of a doorbell, right? A little soft in the background, same like thunderstorms, right? Maybe that's like if you've had years of thunderstorms going on and your dog's like, I just want to go in the tub. They're probably not going to take food. They're probably not going to engage with you. Right. So maybe we need to introduce the sound of a thunderstorm at a low level through some computer speakers or whatever.
Just put it on a loop 24/7. To work through.
I mean, we don't want to make it worse.
You keep bringing up the bathtub thing. Is that what your dogs used to do?
Yeah. I can relate to that one.
Literally, did you just take off down the hallway and I just hear
yeah, boom.
Just dives.
I mean, that's common. That's a common one. Is the bathtub.
Bad thing is, like, she just figured out where it was, like, the first day when she started losing it. Just plowed through the door and...
Yeah. This looks good to me. I'll set up camp here. Right? So the key to desensitization is finding what level stimulus you are still able to provide your dog with a positive experience, i.e. food rewards, toy rewards, whatever you're going to use, and then building the level of the stimulus until it no longer elicits a fear response, right? So this is a process that you can start this without any training at all, right? So you can do this. It's as easy. So,
But you do need training.
but you still need to. We're getting there, Kevin. We're getting there. Calm, slow,
843-213.
You guys got anything on desensitization?
You just start off at a distance like you already talked about. Whatever that trigger is, you start off at a distance or a threshold away from that trigger where there's no response, and you just slowly work your way in, keeping it as fun and positive as possible. Now, let's say, going back to the dog scenario, you start 100 yards away from the dogs, maybe you get to 50 yards, and this doesn't happen in 1 day or 2 days, it's multiple sessions. But let's say you get to the 50-yard mark and your dog starts to react, what do you have to do? Back it up, back out to 60 yards, slowly work your way back down, so on and so forth.
Perfect. So that's desensitization, and the thing with that is typically it's exclusive to one thing, right? Like that doorbell. So now we have another event of thunderstorms. We got to desensitize that, right? Now we have people coming over. We got to desensitize that, whatever. So that can be time consuming to pick every little thing that your dog doesn't like and do desensitization. You should, right? But there's some other things that can help speed up this process, and that is having a good system of training at Canine Revolution Dog Training, right?
There it is.
So, see, I said wait for it. So obviously, desensitization is great, engagement is great, but we recommend training, a little bit further than that for all dogs, whether you're even dealing with insecurity or whatever. But training is very, very important when we're talking about addressing high levels of insecurity or any insecurity.
You need some structure.
You need some structure.
You need some routine.
You need some routine.
You need to be able to redirect out of that mindset.
You need some rituals.
For sure. So,
You need some pack mentality.
first step is structure, right? So, interesting.
Really?
Dude, it's like, do you know this stuff?
I guess.
Oh, interesting. Dang.
That's good.
So we have done a previous episode on structure, and then I think also on the potty training episode we talk a lot about structure as well. So check that stuff out as far as the details on that. But introducing structure decreases our dog's level of insecurity simply because it puts us in control of their environment. When we are in control, they can learn to rely and trust us, right? Because we can avoid putting them in situations where they are going to be caused insecurity, right? Maybe not always, but as much as possible, right? This is the starting point, right? So we can control the environment, prevent them from being in scenarios where they're fearful. I can't talk. What is wrong? I'm sorry, guys. When we control the environment, we can prevent putting them in scenarios where they are fearful until we can completely desensitize all the other things we're dealing with, right?
Structure.
Did you say feetful the first time?
Did I? I don't know.
You
Possibly.
think about feet?
Possibly.
You just had a moment where it
My
just
feet
cracked.
Yeah. I
Kelly
don't know.
massaged your feet last night?
I don't know. I was sleeping. All right. You guys see what I got to work with here?
I see it.
The other aspect of training that is crucial is teaching obedience. All right. So obedience is part of teaching our dog a set of rules and expectations to live by. Right. And so when we're talking about obedience, the way that we do obedience when we're addressing these kinds of behaviors, you have to train this to a very high standard, a very high level, advanced. Okay, so precision, right?
Precise.
So while I'm not going to a pet store and getting some kind of puppy class or whatever, right? Oh, my dog sat a couple times, right?
Could be
Pre-K.
Could be a decent
Right.
foundation.
It's a good starting point, right? Exactly. But
And you could have some bad experiences there.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
for sure.
Pre-K.
All right, we're knocking that. We are knocking that officially.
Did you see those? They're crazy, man.
You want a
Dogs-
PhD? You come to the revolution.
All the dogs are just going ham. The instructor's like sitting in a circle, just like, all right, yeah, give them a sit.
So like we're not talking about the occasional our dog sat for us and we give him a treat. I'm talking every time we say sit or we say down or we say come or we say stay, our dog does it, right? This is the level that we are striving to train our obedience to, and this is important. When we give them a command, they must follow it, right? And this isn't us being control freaks. This is from a safety perspective. They have to listen to us, right? We are, again, this goes back to we're in control of the environment. Okay, if we're outside at a busy park and there's cars driving all over the place and things like that, and they can't hold a stay, that's going to be a potential issue, right? And especially if they have that flight response that we talked about, their flight risks, and they want to just take off, and now we got issues.
Not only that, but if they understand that, they know you're going to control the scenario, situation, environment for them.
Yeah.
Therefore, you're also eliminating the insecurity.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
Getting rid of the onion.
That's right.
Getting rid of all the onion layers.
Oh my gosh.
You tell your dog to sit, they don't sit, and you're just like, whatever.
Well,
Then later on in these situations, they're not going to
Or
rely on
people
you.
are like, sit, they don't sit, they're like, good boy.
Give them a treat anyway.
Here's a treat anyway. You're such a cutie.
Good deviation.
Yeah.
Here, let me reinforce that.
Oh goodness. So once you've trained to that level, all right, and if you need help with that, caninerevolutiondogtraining.com. All right, is that our website? Okay. Hit us up.
Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
Boom. Once you're trained to that level, then you can really start to make some progress on dealing with insecurity. So employing our dog is a way to give them a job. You give them something to do, right? So when we do this during times of insecurity, this gives them something to focus on, right? So then we can make sure that we do our part as the pack leader to not allow a negative experience to occur. So we keep going back to the thunderstorm example, right? So
Big one.
once a thunderstorm,
The big onion layer.
we also keep going back to this onion that came out of nowhere. This is not in the article, by the way. I said nothing about onions, so I don't know where.
I'm going to make him like a little trophy thing. It's just going to be an onion.
Yeah.
So he's getting
I
for
like
Christmas.
I like it.
That's a good idea, actually. Get Chris a little onion trophy.
Why do I get that?
You're the one that came up with the article for this
Okay.
episode.
There's not a single onion mentioned in this article, I don't believe.
I see
So
a couple of them.
bringing it back. Thunderstorm begins. Everything we've talked about, we start to see signs. You just typed onion in. You just typed onion in the article. You did. Like I wasn't going to see that. All right, so the thunderstorm begins. Our dogs start to show signs of insecurity, right? They're pacing around the house, they're running into the bathtub, whatever, right? So at that moment, right, assuming we've done our obedience training, everything like that, we can send them to what we call the spot, right? Some people call it the place, whatever. It's a pet cot, a bed, a place that they go and remain in a downstay. So now we're employing them during this fearful time, right? So now they have something to focus on, and when the storm passes, they make it through the fearful experience unharmed, right? And alive. It didn't kill them. Oh my gosh, we made it through.
Placement of that is extremely important as well.
Yeah.
So when I was working, because Lulu used to have, be bad about thunderstorms. Thunderstorm started, spot, middle of my living room.
Yeah.
You're going to sit out here in the open. We're going to go through it together. We're
Yeah.
going to deal with it. If you take food or I can, distract you, good. If not,
Yeah.
we're going to have to work through it.
Yeah, because can we employ them and they still reinforce on insecurity? Sure. Yeah, like what if whatever our spot is or whatever, they're in a corner or they're underneath something or we go like, oh well, we got them in the spot, so now I'm gonna go coddle them. Oh, it's okay, buddy. Right. Same back to what we've already talked about, right? So yeah, that's a huge thing.
Yeah, if your dog's on spot, but like they're shaking because they're insecure about the thunderstorm, let them ride it out. You don't need to touch them. You don't need to talk to them. Just let them
And this
mentally go through it.
Yeah, and it takes time, right? So like this isn't you don't expect to do this one time. A thunderstorm happens, you hold them to a spot, now they're good to go for the next thunderstorm. No, it's going to take time, but eventually, as they learn to rely on the obedience command, rely on you as the pack leader, they get through this thing unharmed. They're slowly building their confidence, right? And this goes for any scenario we've talked about or any scenario you're dealing with.
A lot of times, the insecure dogs, when they find something that's comfortable to them, like the spot. Anytime they're uncomfortable, they just go there and lay there on their own.
So you've got them free roaming. In the house, you're at work, no one's there. And they feel insecure. Now they have a means to get comfort for themselves. They go to the spot, boom, I'm gonna hold my downstay. Right. So yeah, good point for sure. So doing this builds our dog's confidence over time, reduces the insecurity. Right. So this is why a good system of training is crucial. Okay. So hopefully. I know this was probably a lot of information, but hopefully this kind of gives you some insight into insecurity, body language, things to look out for, what to do to address it. let us know if you guys have anything else that you guys want us to address and talk about. But that's all we got. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you next time.